So come on now, Denver train. Take me back to see my Mary Jane. Roll me back, roll me back, roll me back to see my Mary Jane.
Hey everybody, welcome to this evening. Tom is going to give us a presentation on probably one of the most talked about joints in the entire body, which is going to be the knee. And we're very lucky because Tom's actually a doctor, not a knee doctor, but he is definitely a doctor, which means he might know a little bit about the body, but I don't know. I guess we're going to find out. Let me go ahead and stop sharing mine, and Tom, you can start sharing yours.
How do I
How's
do
everybody doing? You guys
that?
saw the snow on the old webcam, right?
Is
There's
there
a
a share button somewhere? Oh, here it is.
green button down at the bottom. It says share.
And then the one for the PowerPoint.
Yeah, and then you click on the PowerPoint window. You're showing the whole screen, but that's all right. That'll work too.
There we go. Okay. I think we're good.
All right. Take it away, Tom.
So Chuck put out a request, I don't know, a month or two ago for somebody to talk about the knee. And I sent him a reply, and I said, I've got a spare knee on the bench in my barn, and I could probably work in a talk on that. And I thought I'd get some response, like, are you crazy or drunk or something? But he just said, okay, you got it. So here's the knee that was in my barn. It's from a deer. So the femur is the thigh bone. This is the ball that goes in the socket, and then down at the bottom is the working part that forms the knee. These sort of round parts are called condyles, and they're kind of smooth and round on each side. There's a groove in between that kind of holds the patella, the knee bone, in there. So these are really like rockers on a rocker chair. The knee doesn't pivot like a hinge in a door does. It kind of rocks back and forth like the rockers on a rocking chair. And of course, it sits on the tibia, and the tibia has grooves that accept those rockers. So if you were out in the snow in a rocking chair and rock back and forth, after a while you get grooves where the rockers kind of made an indentation in the snow. And so these indentations kind of help hold the femur in place. On the front of the tibia is something called a tibial tuberosity, which is this bony outcrop, which is a connection point for the patellar tendon, which arises from the large muscles of the upper thigh. And you can appreciate that there's really nothing to hold this together. So this could just slide any old way. Slide forward, backward, off to the sides. So there's a pretty elaborate system to help hold the knee together. So the knee is formed by the articulation or the connection of the distal femur and the proximal tibia, as I said. It's a hinge joint, although it's sort of more of a rocking joint than a pure hinge. But the only motion of the knee joint is flexion and extension. There's no rotation in the knee itself. And the bones are held together by ligaments, tendons, and muscles. And there's quite a bit of force on the knee, especially in skiing. I don't know how fast this person's going, but the centrifugal force in his turn is going to try and push the femur this way, and the centripetal force from the snow is trying to push the tibia this way. So this joint has a lot of pressure to try and open it up in this direction. So these are drawings by a guy named Frank Netter, who was a physician artist that worked for Ciba Geigy a long time ago. So this is the right knee. As you sit in your chair and you were looking head on into your knee, if you took the kneecap off and all the muscles and things, you would see these condyles that I talked about on the distal femur, and there's similar ones on the tibia. to hold the knee from sliding off sideways, there's these collateral ligaments. The fibula is on the lateral side. So this is the lateral collateral ligament. This is the medial collateral ligament, the MCL. And then to keep the knee from being unstable forward and backwards, there's these cruciate ligaments inside the knee. The one that you see in front is the anterior cruciate ligament, the ACL, which you hear a lot about in sports injuries, and we'll talk about. And then there's the posterior collateral ligament. The anterior ligament mostly keeps the thigh bone from going too far forward, falling off the knee, and the posterior ligament keeps it from going off posteriorly. And there's menisci, these little pads that cushion the bones as they sit on each other. So this is the same view, but from the rear. So you see the posterior cruciate ligament in the front of the picture. So on top of the ligaments, there's a lot of tendons that help hold these muscles together. This is the tibia or the patella, the knee bone. It's in the patellar tendon, which adheres to that tibial tuberosity I talked about earlier. And all these tendons wrap around the knee and connect to the bones below. If you've ever eaten a drumstick on a turkey, you're left with all those sort of hard, fibrous tendons at the end, and you can appreciate just how tough and strong they are.
By the way, I put this presentation in the chat so you could download it and follow along if you want.
Okay. And this shows you these menisci, these sort of pads that act as cushions between the femur and the tibia. And I'll show you some pictures later on where that'll be of some importance. And then this shows the tendons, the patellar tendon, and this really acts as a restraint band that keeps the tibia from sliding forward as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I discuss patellar dislocations. So what's the optimal position of your knee when you're skiing? Well, the technical manual says your knee should be over your front binding. So this person's a little bit vertical, and your shoulder should be over your knees. So she's back a little bit. And to move your knee forward, you're going to have to flex your ankle. So to talk about how muscles work a little bit. So skeletal muscles cross a joint. They attach to two different bones. They have an origin which does not move, and they have an insertion which does move. And these can vary depending on what the muscle is doing and what you want your body to do. So if you think about your biceps muscle, if you're at the gym and you're pumping some barbells, right? Your upper arm doesn't move, and by shortening your biceps muscle, you bring your hand up to your shoulder, right? So if you put those barbells down, you jump up and grab a chin bar and do chin up. Now your hands don't move. The same muscle moves your shoulder to your hands. So a lot of this depends on what other muscles fix different body parts for a given muscle to perform a given function. And that takes some thought sometimes about what's going on. So which muscles flex the knee? The hamstrings, the gracilis, the sartorius, gastrocs, and these other muscles which are smaller and of less importance. So this is a posterior view of the upper leg. So the hamstrings attach actually to the pelvis. They cross the hip joint and attach to the tibia below the knee joint. So as this muscle contracts, it's going to pull your lower leg up, going to bring your heel up to your posterior thigh. So that's flexion.
So it bypasses the femur altogether.
What was that?
It bypasses the femur altogether.
Right. So those are the muscles above your knee which cause flexion. There's also muscles below your knee which cause flexion. So the gastrocs attach to your distal femur and go all the way down to the calcaneus in your ankle. So as you shorten these muscles, it's going to pull your heel up this way. So these are the muscles that you use mostly for running. The soleus doesn't cross the knee joint, so it doesn't play a role in this conversation. So Chuck keeps asking, can you flex the knee too much? You've said this in several of our meetings, and the answer is yes. So this catcher has maximum knee flex, right? His glutes are sitting on his Achilles pretty much, and so he's clearly in the back seat by over flexing. Um, and not to be a chauvinist, I put in a female catcher as well. And you can appreciate her glutes are also below her knees. Although it's interesting, she's maintained a fair bit of flex in her ankles. And I have no idea what the 2 sign is for. I'll let other people postulate on that. So that's flexion of the knee, extension of the knee. The 2 big muscles, the quadriceps and the sartorius. The quadriceps, as the name implies, is made up of 4 muscles. The rectus femoris, which is the most anterior, and then there's 3 muscles side by side. The vastus medialis on the inside, intermedius in the middle, and lateralis on the lateral side. So you can see what they look like. And these are really big, strong muscles. So we go back to our discussion of origin and insertion. The rectus femoris actually starts in the ilium, so it starts in the pelvis. So it crosses the hip joint. The 3 vastus muscles originate in the femur. They're all inserted at the tibia, and the tuberosity is below the knee joint. So they extend the knee and flex the hip.
Depending on which one's stable.
Pardon me?
But depending on which one is stable.
Right.
Right.
So the sartorius is a really interesting muscle, I think. It originates at the iliac crest, so it's the lateral part of your hip. It inserts in the proximal tibia medially. So it's going to flex the hip, extend the knee, laterally rotate the knee, and abduct the knee. So it starts laterally in your pelvis, inserts medially on your tibia. So if you shorten this muscle, it's going to pull the knee upwards. It's going to flex the hip. It's going to extend the knee because it goes to the tibia. It's going to tend to move the knee towards the origin. So it's going to abduct your leg. It's going to move laterally. And because this is posterior to this, it's going to tend to want to rotate your leg to the anteriorly. So this does everything you want to do in skiing. And it's funny. I said if I told people to use more sartorius, that would make a lot of sense. But how do you know to activate this muscle? Like your brain knows how to do it, but it's all subconscious. So in terms of knee motion, what muscles pull the knee forward? Well, the anterior tibialis.
Hold on, you got a question.
Oh, sorry. Dion, go ahead.
Hey, Tom, you said that it rotates the knee anteriorly.
Right. Well,
I'm not understanding the direction of that.
Well,
go back. Let's talk about this one because he hit a very vital. It's not a very big muscle, but it is like kind of vitally important.
Right.
In skiing. And you got to think about it where it's shortening from. So it's pulling the inside of the knee towards the outside of the hip.
Right.
So would it be like helping with an external rotation?
It's the external rotational piece.
Right.
It's
so
an
this
abductor.
This insertion site is posterior to the origin site. So it's going to tend to move it forward and laterally. So it's going to tend to rotate your foot.
Yeah, it's going to move your knee laterally. This way, out.
Right.
As it shortens, it's going to shorten and move it out.
Right.
Okay, I just got confused and I couldn't picture that. Thanks for explaining.
Sure. All these pictures are in 2 dimensions, and the muscle operates in 3 dimensions. So it really requires you to sort of think about what's happening there.
It's kind of like we've talked about the ankle, and the ankle is full of these muscle groups, which the insertion is not where you expect it to be. It could be on the opposite side of the foot, which is why when we dorsiflex, the foot rotates outwards, and when we plantar flex, the foot rotates to the inside because we're using different muscles and where their insertion points, um, where the end of the muscle is, that it controls all that. So when we shorten our, that famous muscle in the front of our tibia, and we get the dorsiflexion, because the insertion point is actually on the outside of the foot, it pulls the foot up and out, and you get a flex that goes like this and this. And the knee's got, I mean, I'm going to ask Tom, why are there so many groups of muscles in the quad? You've already described 4 different quadriceps, and you haven't even gotten to the hamstrings. And
Right.
there's like all these hamstrings, and they don't start at the same spots, and they don't end at the same spots.
Yeah,
Why?
they're not. They don't lie parallel to each other,
No, they do
and
not.
that diagonal rotation is what you need to move the leg. Otherwise, you would just move like Pinocchio, just straight up and down.
Right,
Keep moving
exactly.
in all these different planes simultaneously, depending on how much of which muscle is activated, um, and for how long and how hard. It's sort of fascinating how all this happens.
It is really fascinating because if you think about it, I mean, if we really, one of the things I thought about for a long time, I always thought the quadricep muscle was one muscle, right? But as
Hmm.
soon as you start looking at it in terms of, it's essentially the knee is a hinge joint for all practical purposes. It's pretty much a hinge joint. There's a little bit of rotation there, but we don't want to talk about that. And there's a little bit of slippage that happens. We don't really want to talk about that too much because it's Piquita. It's like a little
Right,
bit, but all of the action happens with the using these piano roll movements of those muscles, right? That allow this both a femoral rotation, that's an abduction, and a femoral rotation that is an adduction, moving inwards.
right,
So that, and it's just fascinating that those are all controlled by a group of muscles and not one.
right. And of course, as one leg abducts, the other one adducts.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So uh, this was discussed on the ankle um, conference. So there's really 3 muscles that pull your knee forward: the anterior tibialis, the extensor hallucis longus, the extensor tibialis, which is a lot of Latin. Um, but the hallux is the big toe. So it's going to extend, it's going to lift up your big toe. The digitorum just means the digits, the other toes. So it's going to extend your other toes. So these muscles help you sort of wiggle your toes. Or if you stepped on something really hot and you wanted to quick lift your toes to not get burned, these are going to pull up on your toes. The anterior tibialis is going to insert on the first metatarsal. So as it shortens, as Chuck was saying, it's going to tend to move your foot laterally and rotate it laterally. And when you think about these muscles, why did Mother Nature create these? So really, these are used so that when you're walking or running, you don't stub your toes. So, and when you think about when you're walking or running, these muscles get activated when your foot's off the ground as you want to swing it forward. So they're really moving a portion of your body that has no weight on it. These are really kind of low impact muscles um, when they want to move your toes. But going back to that origin and insertion thing, when we're skiing, we actually fix the foot and use these muscles to pull the knee forward. So now you've got muscles that um, have been basically devised over time just to move your toes and stuff. And now we're trying to move, in my case, 200 pounds of skier um, forward, and that's why these hurt so much when you get back and you're trying to work your way forward again.
And hence, we don't want to move the big part of the body. We want to move the little parts.
Right,
A hell of a lot easier to move your legs than it is to move your body.
right. So when you flex your knee, what happens in terms of ski jargon? So if you flex the knee by pulling the boot back, this will move the center of mass forward. That's the first fundamental, right? So if you feel like you're in the back seat, you pull your boot back, your center of mass moves forward. If you flex the knee by pulling the knee forward, center mass moves forward, same thing, fundamental one. So we're doing the same thing by two different methods. We're either pulling the knee forward or we're pulling the foot back, but both do the same thing. It moves your center mass forward. You can flex the knee by relaxing your quads. Basically, you sit down. You just drop your glutes, and the center of mass moves to the back seat. So, and this is kind of this is that those catcher pictures, right? We don't want this, even though it's the same motion of the knee joint. It's kind of how you get there as much as what you do. If you flex the knee by lifting the knee superiorly, you transfer pressure to the other ski, which is the second fundamental. So all these things are really kind of complicated. So knee extension. So if you extend the knee by bringing the boot forward, the center mass moves backwards towards the tails. Another first fundamental move. If you extend the knee by bringing the hip forward, center mass moves forward towards the tips. So think of a ski jumper, right? He extends his knees fully till his shoulders are over his tips. So he's bringing all his center mass forward through knee extension, whereas here knee extension is going to move you backwards. By extending the knee in isolation, this can create bracing, where you're just moving the knee or straightening the leg and pushing it down the hill. So that would be, I think, fundamental too. So I looked up there's really not a lot on the internet about the knee in skiing at all. But I've seen some Deb Armstrong videos. And I went back and played those and took a few notes from what she mentions. So the uphill knee has more flex because it's uphill. And the inside leg gets shorter as you ski. Tipping movements originate from the knees and ankles independent of the hip at transition. And I think what she means by hip is actually the pelvis, not so much the hip joint. Those two terms get used kind of loosely back and forth a lot. The shorter the inside leg, the shorter the turn radius, because you wind up on a steeper edge angle. And lifting the inside knee drives the body forward and creates higher edge angles and more, she calls it ski bite. I think Chuck would call this grit and a tighter turn. So I looked up some stuff on ski injuries. There was this article from the Western PSI Western Foundation a few years ago. They kind of went back and compiled statistics on ski injuries. The most common was an ACL tear. Second was an ACL tear combined with an MCL tear. It occurred most frequently in skiers 15 to 24 years old and with decreased fitness. So you would think these kids or young people would have the most fitness, and I suspect they ski the most out of control, which accounts for the injuries.
No, they don't. What are you talking about?
They do in my mountain. God, Wednesday nights is school nights, and you don't want to be on the mountain with these kids. And we have an instructor to a year get injured significantly by getting run into by
Yeah.
these.
Well, we used to have midnight. We used to have midnight skiing on Friday and Saturday nights. Those were a blast.
When you were in high school, or
No, it was when I was in college. It was like the first few years that I taught, and yeah, they always had a few instructors out there, and your job was to teach if you needed to teach. So you might be teaching a 2 a.m. lesson to a couple of drunk people. And then after that, you were out helping the ski patrol clean up the hill.
so they describe sort of the biomechanics of these ski injuries. So one is a jump landing with your weight back. And as you come down on the top of the boot pushes up into the calf and directs force through the tibia and tears the ACL. This is their language. I would describe it the other way, that the the knee crashes down onto the boot, transmitting pressure into the knee joint and the ACL, but it's all semantics. They call it something a phantom foot phenomenon. So your uphill arm is back, skier's off balance to the rear. All these things are people who fall with their weight back pretty much. Hips below the knees. So if you think of that catcher with skis on falling, this would be him. Uphill skis unweighted, so all the pressure is going to go on the downhill ski, um, and with the upper body facing the downhill ski. So basically, it's falling backwards with your downhill leg extended and putting a lot of pressure on the downhill knee. So I looked up some stuff on ACL tears. I'm a Giants fan, and our best wide receiver just had one of these a week or two ago, and he got it by jumping up in the air, not landing on the knee or getting hit in the knee. But so if this skier is making a left turn, his femur's rotating left, his lower leg is rotating left, and his foot's rotating left. If something causes that lower leg to stop rotating, let's say this ski tip hits a gate or a tree or a rock in the snow, the femur continues to rotate, but now the lower leg goes the other way, and this causes upper lower leg separation, as opposed to upper body lower body separation, which is a good thing. And so as the ACL, which is attached to the femur and the tibia, starts rotating in opposite directions, Chuck's always doing this thing. Well, that's what happens to your ACL, and it snaps off basically.
What does the ACL do?
That's inside your knee and prevents your femur from sliding forward off your tibia.
Yeah, kind of important.
Yep. You know how we some people ski with kids with those vests and the well, this is that same idea, but it's inside your knee basically to keep your femur from going too fast forward
Right.
off your tibia.
It's slipping over the top this way.
Right. So if you were to ski downhill and hit a snow fence, so your skis couldn't go forward anymore, your femur would want to keep going off your tibia forward, and your ACL is the restraint to keep that from happening. But depending on how much force there is, it may or may not be strong enough, and if it isn't, that's when it tears. The third mechanism for this that they describe in their article is the ski catches awkwardly in the snow with carving, and the ski twists the knee. I thought of this as if you picture a beginner skier turning with their upper body in really heavy snow. We call it mashed potatoes in the East. I don't know if you call it that or if you have that in the Rockies, but so you're putting all this turn on the knee when the skis won't go, and that can cause injury to the ligaments in the knee. So when I ski in mashed potatoes, I do everything with railroad tracks. I really try to use as little rotation as I can to kind of save my knee joint. So I haven't seen this listed as a ski injury, but it's got to happen. I was involved in a case of this about 50 years ago.
It does happen.
Often.
Okay.
And often there's also often a tear of the patellar tendon that happens frequently. And it tends to actually happen in skiers over 40.
Well, the case I was involved in, I'll tell you the case. It was the day before I graduated medical school, so we were all in our mid-20s. But basically, the patella slides out of this groove, and it's almost always laterally. The case I was involved in was playing softball. So somebody took a big swing, and all this is a bit like if you put two ski poles in this guy's hand, he would look a lot like a lot of our beginner skiers, generating a lot of torque with their upper body that gets transmitted to their lower body. So I was catching, and this batter just crushed this ball, and then immediately collapsed. So I got up to see what was wrong, and fortunately, it was June in Georgia, so we were all in shorts. I could see his kneecap was on the side of his knee, not in front where it's supposed to be. So I said, well, it's pretty obvious. I just got to slide it back in the middle. And it wouldn't go. And then I thought about it for a second. I said, well, his knee is flexed. So this patellar tendon is kind of stretched tight by the knee flex. So I just pushed his foot forward to straighten his leg. At the same time, I put just a little bit of force on the patella and it went right back into place. So this was a pretty easy diagnosis because we were all in shorts. But, in ski wear, this would be kind of hard to diagnose. I think the one time somebody might let you know this is what's going on is if it's happened to him before, and he says, I think my kneecap is out, and you could probably feel that through his ski wear and potentially help him. So what exercises can we do to prevent ski injuries? Double leg squats, single leg squats, lunges, gluteal bridges. This is where you lie on your back with your feet on the ground and basically push your belt up towards the ceiling.
Hip thrusts.
Yep. Crab or monster walks with bands. I use old cycling inner tubes that have a hole in them. It's a cheap source of a band. Jump down where you just basically hop down off. I recommend doing this on stairs. In fact, I recommended this to my wife about a year ago. We have brick stairs outside, and this will transmit force not only. The reason this helps for skiing is it develops your quads, but the force goes up your spine, and so it puts pressure on your spinal bones, your vertebrae, and will stimulate them to be harder and less prone to osteoporosis. I think everybody knows what planks are. It's basically a push up on your arms instead of your hands, and a side plank is just a side plank. So skiing after knee injuries. So I teach, or I guess I say teach. I do a clinic for elderly skiers that want to kind of get back into skiing, and everybody has a myriad of medical issues that does this, and among those are people who've had previous knee injuries, not always from skiing. Could have been somebody had a knee injury playing football in high school or other things. So if they've had a surgical knee repair, they should have some input, I think, from their orthopedist about what they should do and not do, and they should be doing some exercises to strengthen their knee. Now, knee replacement, I'm not aware of any real limitations on skiing with knee replacement. And a good friend of ours has had both knees replaced. I'm trying to get her back into skiing. She's a bit reluctant. So here's a skier, and you can see that this space in between these two bones. So the meniscus is sitting in here. On the lateral side, here's the fibula. This is the lateral side. This is bone on bone. There's no meniscus left, and these bones just grind in each other every time the skier moves. So she had a prosthesis placed in the distal femur and a prosthesis placed in the proximal tibia, and this space between the joint space was restored, and she's back to skiing. This is Lindsey Vaughn. That's her knee.
That's her knee?
Yep.
Oh, wow. So
And I read an article that she just broke the record for the oldest, kind of oldest skier period, or the oldest woman skier on the U.S. Olympic team at age 41. And the record she broke was a 33-year-old skier named Lindsey Vaughn 8 years ago. So she came back to skiing and broke her old record. So I was going to kind of close with, Chuck and I talked last week about, what was my overall concept about the knee. And what I said to him, I think yesterday or recently, I said, basically the knee joint's connected to the hip joint and it's connected to the ankle joint. And when those joints move, the knee joint moves. And it's pretty complex how all this goes together. So this will play. So this is Richie Berger, and just watch his knees. Sometimes I think what I want to do is just point my knees where I want to go. If I can slow this down a little bit. No. But there's really very little up and down motion If you look at his waistline, and you see the shortening of the inside knee, which is mostly, I think, caused by hip flexion. It's not really a knee joint movement, but it's those other joints that, as they move, the knee comes along as part of the package, basically. And I think that's it.
Rivet up.
Cool. Any questions? I didn't ask you to speak.
I have a question. Tom, I've heard a lot of talk about the tibialis muscle. And I guess that's referring to the tibialis anterior. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
And that I just heard a lot of people talk about firing the tibialis. Does that sound correct to you?
I don't know if it's firing, but contracting it. So like I said, if you keep your foot fixed, you don't let your toes come up and you shorten this muscle, it's going to pull your knee forward. So it's going to move your center of mass forward. So, whenever we see people that are kind of in the back seat, we're telling them to flex their ankle joint. I tell people to move their knee forward. But this is what does that basically. So you make the foot the origin and the upper tibia the insertion. So this is the part that moves when you fix your foot in place.
Oh, okay, so moving the knee forward, not dorsiflex.
Well, yeah, it depends on, well, again, it depends on what is stable and what isn't. Because as Tom said, we're in a ski boot, which restricts the movement of the foot by contracting the tibialis anterior, it pulls the knee forward instead of lifting the foot up.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So essentially, we're still closing the two joints, but it's instead of pulling your toes up, it is pulling the knee forward.
Right. So if I stood on your toes and you contract and you fired that muscle, your toes couldn't raise up because I'm keeping them in place. That would move your knee forward. It would close the ankle joint by moving your knee forward rather than moving your foot upward.
But there's also the peroneal muscles that get involved in that.
Yeah, yeah. And we talked a lot about that when we were talking about the foot. Roman had a question. Is there a bit of rotation in the knee joint?
It's really quite minimal. I think when you fully extend your knee 100%, those bones can kind of slide a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever there's flex in the knee, it really prevents that from happening. So it would pretty much be at full extension. They can sort of slide on each other a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with the knee injuries, so I had
Yeah.
I have quite a few surgeries for my left knee, so it's
So the way the knee is built, these two knuckles here go in these two joints right there. And there is a little bit of rotation there that will happen, right? But the point is, we don't want to add that. There's also this, but we don't want to add any to that either.
Right.
Because this is really about aligning forces between the two mobility joints. The one mobility joint will be the ankle joint, and the other mobility joint's the hip joint. And we're aligning forces so that we have maximum, where this joint is straight. But as soon as we start to move it this way and this way, it gets weak really fast. So he had that picture up earlier where he was showing how the ACL kind of gets, where you twist it against, you twist against, that one there, where you're twisting the femur one way and then you're twisting the knee the other way. And what does that do? That starts to create a torquing motion in the joint.
Right.
And the anterior and those two cruciates which cross, one keeps the knee from moving forward, the other one keeps it from moving laterally. You're putting a lot of strain on those two cruciate joints, and that's why there's injuries.
yeah. I had ACL. on left knee. So
I had ACL
know what
too
it
for a
is.
different reason, but
Yeah.
the point is that we want to maintain the knee joint going this way and not this way or this way as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And
So if if my knee is bad 90 degrees, so I'm sitting in a chair, so I can with my hand I can from
yeah,
my lower leg just make it that like sort of exercise to add
yeah,
mobility or strengthen muscles. Yeah.
yeah, you can do that when the joint is relaxed. It allows you to have, and you want that gapping, right? You want to have that gapping because he was just showing Lindsey Vaughn's. The bone doesn't go against each other. There's like the meniscus, which are two little rings that look like this, right?
I
And
need that. I need that.
yeah, so do I. On both sides, right? On my right knee. But that gapping has to be there because that's what allows this little bit of movement to happen. If we don't have that gapping and it's bone against bone, that's where bad things really happen too. But we don't want to twist them. And there's a misconception with a lot of instructors, especially level ones and level twos, that think that we need to rotate the knee. We don't rotate the knee. We rotate the hip and the ankle, and that's what makes the knee go, when it goes side to side like this, not like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what's the best way to in the lesson to address this
I
to
mean,
the
we could always say point the knees. I always like to say point the knees. We
Mhm.
point the knees where we want them to go, or point the skis where you want them to go, or anything like that will help you with that rotational piece. Because that rotational piece originates in the thighs and the hip, not in the, we don't, with the, we don't say, hey, we want to rotate our legs around the knee joint.
Hmm.
We rotate the legs using the femurs in the hip sockets.
Yeah, there was a in the presentation there was something that mentioned about falling. So that's something that
Yeah,
I try to tell people. And if you fall, try to fall to the side,
fall
not
to
to
the
the back.
side. Don't go backwards. Don't get scared. I mean, he had one that was that last one where you fall backwards, twisting, and then the downhill ski tail gets stuck. And the next thing you know, your body's trying to go this way, your knee's trying to keep it back, and something gives. And that's usually the cruciate that gives.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the ski acts as a lever that just generates so much extra force.
Yeah.
Um,
Rebecca, you had a question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When we're coaching, do we, we're talking about, if you talk about the knees, then you're talking about internal coaching as opposed to talking about the skis, which is external coaching.
Mhm.
Do we want to focus more on, supposedly in external coaching gets retained much better than
Yeah,
internal?
you're talking about cueing, yes.
Yeah. So do we
Yeah.
want to really talk about body parts, or do we want to talk about things outside the body in order to
Kind of
get a better
depends.
understanding?
Yeah, kind of depends on the situation, right? Because one can have a more immediate effect and one can have more of a distance effect. Um, I'm not going to discourage you. That's like the proximal part of it. So if we're having interior movement, Tom mentioned you need to just move your knees forward, right? Shorten the distance between the knees and the skis, things like that. That is a very effective way of helping you. Or you can say, point your knees into towards the trees.
Or point your skis towards the
Or you
trees?
could say point your skis towards the trees, right? And that's one's a distant, and one's more proximal, one's closer to you. So it depends on what you think is going to be effective for that particular skier. And when we're starting to talk about stance, we want to kind of get them in the right position. Other
Yeah, when I took
questions?
the first time on skis lessons, we actually do this on carpet before you even go on the snow. And I
Right.
tell people your knees should be over your toes and your shoulders should be over your knees. And I just take their ski pole and put it at their toes. And I say, okay, bring your knee up till it touches the pole. So that's where your knee wants to be when you're skiing. And they can feel how much flex that is um, in their ankle. And shoulders, people don't have a great concept, but I may have to say, okay, move your shoulder up more, more, more. Okay, now you're at the pole. So this is the right angles that you want to feel when you're skiing. Um, and that's something they can do when they're skiing during the day. See if stop, just put your pole vertical from your toes and see if your knees forward enough.
Yeah, that's what we call Tony nose.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Tony always knows, right? Tony knows, right? Any other questions about the knee?
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation.
Thanks.
How many of you have had knee injuries?
Me, 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 me.
Me. I know Dion had
Yeah.
one. Right.
I have
Mine
a
actually
three,
came
I have
from
a 3 surgeries on my left knee, so that's in
3
disclosure.
surgeries. Wow. Were they all related, or was that like 3 different injuries?
The first one was meniscus in 2006, like excessive punching, like kicking.
Gaping.
And
Okay.
then ACL in 2014, so also not skiing. And that followed with the recent meniscus again,
Okay.
like wear and tear.
What happened to the meniscus?
Just wear and tear following the previous injury, and
Yeah,
but
mine.
just now I'm thinking how to get back to skiing and all that.
Yeah. Actually, the good thing about skiing is it's considered a closed sport, closed movement sport, which means as long as the skis don't leave the ground, you're in good shape
Mhm.
for meniscus. I hyperextended my knee in basketball, which cost me the meniscus on both sides of my right knee. And I've had surgery not to replace them, but to repair them, but they were both folded.
Mhm.
There was a spiral tear, and then a fold. So a spiral tear is not like straight across; it actually tears this way around because it's a ring, and it tears around this way, which makes it hard, and then it folded in on itself, and that's not good news. But they went in and tried to repair it, and I can tell you right now, I'm pretty sure that both sides are blown out again. One I know blew out when I was standing there at a soccer game and just kind of twisted it to say hello to my wife when she walked up, and ooh, boy, that burned. That hurt. So,
Yeah.
any other questions? I thought it was a good presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions about the joints or the muscles involved? No? You guys are very quiet tonight. Oh my God, Larry Murdoch made it. Larry's never been hurt in his entire life. Cool.
Actually, I
So,
have a question for
yeah.
Tom. So when there is no meniscus left to cushion the knee joints, are exercises focusing on strengthening the quadricep and hamstring appropriate to provide additional stability?
Yes.
I think you'll get the benefit of the quad strengthening for things other than the bone on bone pain that you're getting.
I don't have bone-on-bone pain. I don't have any meniscus left in my knees, but I'm posing that question because you included exercises in your presentation with respect to the knee, but I am curious with respect to the meniscus, if you did any research to define what would be helpful.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. I can look it up, see what's
I
what's
can
out
do
there.
that too. No worries.
Okay.
I
good
could
question.
actually, I could speak to that.
Mhm.
Yes, like with any other injuries that you might have had over time, time-related injuries. It is, my shoulder is also a disaster. My right shoulder is really a disaster. I'm using that as an anecdote because that was one of the big reasons why I started lifting a lot, was to strengthen all these shoulders to keep them from falling out. And the research that I did on my knee is that the stronger the joints are around it, the less likely you're going to be suffering from impact.
Mhm.
But there are things that I cannot do. I will not run and I will not jump. So my basketball days are over, my tennis days are over, but I do rollerblade and I do bicycle and those lower impact things where I can strengthen all of those ligaments and muscles around ligaments, muscles, and tendons around that joint to help stabilize the joint.
But there's also now the ability to replace the synovial fluid and
Yes.
kind of provide lubrication that the meniscus usually does,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that does not require major surgery.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting, Rebecca.
And they are actually also playing with the idea of using those special cells that suddenly I can't remember what
Stem
they
Stem
cells.
stem
cells.
cells, stem
Stem
cells,
cells. Yeah.
yeah, stem
There,
To
cells,
regenerate tissue.
yeah, to
there's
try to
also
help rebuild those pieces. And I've also heard of repair surgery where they actually 3D printed meniscus to put inside with live tissue, if you can imagine.
there's also soft wave therapy, but I'm actually going tomorrow to see what it is. No, not tomorrow. That's something else. But the
I
next
can tell you,
next meeting, I'll let you know what I found out.
Yeah,
hey,
hey,
Roman,
feel free.
shockwave therapy is something that's been used in horses for joints and other um, injuries for a long time. It For arthritis injuries after the treatment, it often will reduce how the inflammation and how those nerves are sending pain signals. Doesn't repair anything, but it does reduce the inflammation. It speeds more blood flow to the area, so kind of turns some of the body's healing abilities back on. Um, it does help with arthritis. You have to do it fairly frequently for arthritis treatments. And you normally have to do a series of treatments to get maximum effect, and then you're good for 6 months to a year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I believe in anything that stresses the joints that's going to stimulate the body to start figuring out ways to help repair or replace pieces, right? So I'm a big advocate of always working the joints and not necessarily, or working muscles and all the other stuff that I do, but I'm a big advocate of making sure that you're continually stressing the joint so that it will it can react better to any kind of stresses that you put on it later on, right? Skiing is a very demanding sport.
Yeah, there's no question
Suck.
that the more strong built up muscles you have around any joint, uh, the the better is going to protect against injury or manage around injury.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I talked to an examiner a few years ago who has bad arthritis in his knees. He gets platelet-rich plasma injections around Thanksgiving, and it gets them all through ski season. So they just draw some blood out of your arm, spin it down, get rid of the red cells, and inject it back into your knee joint. And the components that are in there help healing and so on.
Yeah, I've done both PRP and the synovial fluid, the hyaluronic acid,
Hmm.
to help generate or support the synovial fluids.
Hmm.
And they're both fairly short-lived. The PRP I actually had more success with the hyaluronic acid injection than I did with the PRP. And, a lot of times it's just your physiology that
Mhm.
kind of dictates what can be more successful or not.
See you, Kevin.
How long, Larry, did the synovial fluid last and provide you with perhaps
Actually,
additional cushioning?
yeah, actually that lasted up to, at one point in time it was 6 months, so it got me through the ski season. More recently, it's been just a 2 month, my my knee is getting, as Dion and Gumby and Scott know, my knee is getting less and less effective. And but yeah, so the the timeline on it is really dependent upon what kind of, or how long that damage has been in there. But it when I first started doing it, it was up to 6 months, and then so it's sort of gone to about 2 months now. But they don't like you to get those injections any closer than 3 months apart. So yeah, the muscle, the strengthening of your lower quadriceps above your knee, and then also your tibialis and your calf, along with your hamstring, kind of that whole area right there around the knee. The more that you can strengthen that, the less impact it has, or the greater impact it has on supporting whatever's going on in the knee.
Oh, of course. I do weightlifting and a variety of exercises, but I was just
Yeah.
curious.
But the synovial, I mean, it did help generate, or it does help the synovial fluids for sure.
Cool. Any other questions? So I have a video, and we've all seen this one. So I'm going to go ahead and share it anyway. But what I want you to notice is when it comes to how much the knee moves, not this one, this one. Oops. What I want you guys to notice is how much the knee moves.
In which direction?
Well, then now you get to analyze that, right?
You're cheating.
This is Riley, but how much does his knee actually move?
Got a lot of flexion and extension going on.
But it's only in which
It,
directions?
it's not the knee that is moving.
It's vertical for the most part.
I think
Up and down.
This is a great video of demonstrating. Really, I mean, the knee is really it just articulates in one direction,
Right.
up and down,
This was, yeah.
forward and back. And really, Riley's not getting a lot of. He's not trying to over rotate. He's not trying to under rotate. He is just allowing the knee to flex and extend in its
Well,
natural.
and there's a lot of action in the hip flexor itself as you watch him ski.
Yeah, especially when he starts doing these retraction style turns. He calls them
Mm-hmm.
flexion and transitions. These are retraction turns,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you'll notice that the knees still just articulate this way.
There is turning of the femur, however,
There is
pointing
turning
the
of the femur.
knees from one side of
Yes.
the hill to the other, but they're
Sure,
staying pointed the same direction as the feet.
they are 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So there is
That's
no separation of rotation between the feet and the knee.
Right.
100%. So we're not seeing a tremendous amount because there shouldn't be. right? There's the flexion, knees are over the toes still. So really when we start, and this is true with our guests a lot. And those of us that are, trainers working with folks that are probably less educated, that the knee doesn't move laterally. And it doesn't rotate against itself, where the hip goes one direction, the knee goes the other, or the toes go the other.
But in this frame, is there too much extension, the vertical extension?
Well, what he's showing here, actually, this is why I love this video. This is just such a technically accurate video, and he's showing three different kinds of turns. He's showing in a full extension turn, so where he fully extends. Then he shows more of a middle transition, where the body crosses over at the same time. The legs are crossing under.
Now, are we supposed to have less of full extension? That
You know what? It's like any other tactic that we have, Roman. It depends on what you're trying to do. There is nothing wrong with a full extension.
yeah, but one of the trainers said that which the head should go up and down. If she had going up and down, there's something not quite right.
Most of the time, there is not something that's going right? And we're watching this, but this is really technically accurate turns. He's still engaging the ski high in the arc. He's still getting the ski to bend. It's just he's got a little bit more up and down movement.
Well,
But
what
it's
he's
not-
showing,
It's
Go
not
ahead, Rebecca.
totally up and down.
Well, and this one isn't. This was more of where he's showing this movement. He's
Middle.
showing how one leg extends at the same time the other one contracts, and how you move your skis from side to side, your body over your skis by this movement, instead of pulling both up and then transitioning this way, pulling both up and transitioning this way, or going up, letting the skis move under you, and then coming back down again.
So this is more like what like ideal that the knees remain flexed through uh, transition.
Yes.
Not like that, yeah.
I mean, even when he's fully extended, he still has some bend in his knees, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's not a lot, but I mean, you have to have it. Because if you straighten your legs completely out and the knees fully extended, what happens?
It's like you'll be going through speed bumps, fully shaking up and down, jumping.
Yeah, but what happens if you don't? You know what I mean? What happens if you don't? I mean, if you fully extend, what biomechanically happens to you?
You lose.
Then you'll be inclining.
Yeah, the only thing you can do is incline, right? Because you can no longer rotate your legs, right?
Right.
Which means he's maintaining a little bit of flex there to allow him to start that rotational piece.
Mm.
But he extends both legs, and then he flexes the inside leg.
But he's also not totally pointing straight up. He's a little bit lateral.
He is a little bit lateral.
What's the next turn?
I mean, you see it right here. His movement is lateral, isn't it? I mean, he's moving that way. And even there, he has a little bit of a twist at the top. It's very difficult to avoid that. Any other questions?
You know, one thing you said, Chuck, about, he's showing the three different options of full extension, um, a combination of flexion, extension, and then he's showing the full flexion at the initiation. And you said it, that any one of these, I mean, he's very precise in these movements, and there's nothing wrong with a full extension when it's needed. It's how you apply it. If you go with a full extension and you're completely unweighted, then at that point you've sacrificed the pressure from ski to ski, and that's where people get into trouble with the full extension.
Right.
But he shows the contact. He uses that extension, that full extension, as a to allow the contact to the outside ski, to allow that pressure to be directed to the outside ski as part of that extension.
Yeah. He's still flexing.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
still flexing the inside
I
ski to allow him to get pressure to the outside ski.
Right.
I watched a video with Tom Gelly where he was looking at two World Cup racers and they had different styles of transition.
Yeah, I'm
One
familiar with
skier
that video.
had an extension at transition, which provided more drag, which only really matters if you're talking about who's to the bottom first. While the other skier maintained a hips behind the feet transition. The guy with the full extension actually won the race, even though he had more drag theoretically, because that full extension at transition allowed him to use his skeleton more instead of depending just on his thigh muscles. And he didn't wear himself out. So he was actually faster in the bottom of the course because he had more energy. So that middle transition or the extended transition actually requires less physical effort. When you think about skiing bumps versus carving down a groomer, we tend to have a flex transition when we're skiing bumps, and we all work our quads and our hamstrings and our glutes and our abs and everything else, but we tend to be out of breath. Whereas if we come up taller through transition, it can be more efficient for our muscles, but not necessarily higher performance or faster, but just efficient.
Yeah, you segued beautifully into what I was going to say. Why do we do full extensions? I mean, why do our guests fully extend?
Because
Other
they
than the
can't
fact they don't
stay
want,
squatted.
well, they can't stay squatted. Who wants to do this all the time?
Me,
Okay, good luck with that.
wall squats, baby, wall squats.
You know what? I'll see you at the gym tomorrow morning at sumo squats tomorrow. 7 sets of 16. Let's go. But
I'm
the
in the
problem,
wrong state, Gumby.
yeah, it doesn't matter because I hate doing them and I don't
Tell you
want to do
what, he's going to be here next Saturday, and you can come up and we'll have a session. I won't be involved. I'll be the judge.
I'll be painting next Saturday, so how about you guys come down to Denver for breakfast? We'll do it down here.
There you go.
Or we can do it the Saturday after, which is the 25th,
No,
because I will be up in the valley.
I've scheduled next week as rest week, so.
There you go.
But no, the point is that it's very, very demanding on us to be doing a fully retraction turn all the time. I mean, it's fun, but you can only do it in limited amounts. The extension gives you that time, that momentary ability to rest.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Gelly also talked about how anatomical differences between people
Yeah.
actually play into which kind of transition is more efficient for them as racers. There are some people who, because of how their body is proportioned, do a flex transition more naturally. Whereas there are some people based on their proportions where that flex transition is a lot more work. So,
So that sounds like a short person, tall person.
oh wait, am I short? And do I like flex transitions? What?
No, you get to use less. You have less range of motion,
I still
which
use
allows you to
all that
have,
I've
yeah,
got.
you use less range of motion, which means you will be able to use less muscle. Less energy. Except for those of us that are a full 6 feet tall, have a longer range of motion, and we have to use more effort against
I
those
know. That's why I hate
against those
skiing bumps with
levers.
people who are over 6 feet tall.
Yeah,
Because they're like, what?
you have one of those in the house, don't you?
Yeah, my knees hit my chest before he's like halfway down.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? This was a good session. Cool. Thank you, Tom.
Oh, you're welcome.
I think that was really, really useful. The the core gig takeaway I had from from the knees kind of aligned exactly what you. Well, as a matter of fact, let me bring up what you said, which I thought was really, really good. Because on at the end of every one of these, I always ask folks, hey, what was a big thing that you felt like you got out of this? Doing these things, because the point of this is to learn. And even though Tom's a doctor. What kind of doctor are you again?
Cardiologist.
Cardiologist. Yeah.
The heart doesn't move any bones.
Doesn't move any bones, but it's kind of important. I don't
But when
know.
it stops beating, the bones stop moving.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So I guess it does move bones. It's just indirect.
It is indirect, yeah. Here we go. All right. Yeah, he said, the more he goes, what I've taken away from this is that the knee joint is connected to the hip and ankle joints, and the complex interaction of all three of these in a precise manner is required, while the effects of the snow and speed make that kind of complicated. That is a kind of a long-winded way of saying, in my mind, that we have two mobility joints. You got the lower leg. I'm sorry, the foot, the ankle, which is actually two joints, and then you got the hip joint, which is a mobility joint because it has a large range. Both of those have large ranges of motions. But if you tried to use the knee joint like you did those two joints, I think bad things would happen. So you almost have to have a stability joint in between those two mobility joints to make the body do what you want it to do. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Thank you, everybody.